Hi everyone, my name is Kylie Spindler, and today I'm going to be showing you my City as Text final project. Okay, so for my final project, I decided to focus mostly on the course objective to seek patterns, make connections, and create meaning through sensory experience. Specifically, I'll be connecting similarities and differences between Los Angeles and Fort Worth, which are two major cities in the United States. So, Los Angeles and Fort Worth natives who plan to visit the other city would particularly benefit to my project. However, anyone who wants to look at a new city in a different way to learn how to make connections can also benefit as well. My main purpose is to compare certain elements and places of these two cities together based on what the places in Fort Worth reminded me of from Los Angeles. I chose this final project because I'm very familiar with Los Angeles and I'll probably eventually move to Fort Worth permanently once I graduate. So I thought it would be interesting and beneficial to find some places that remind me of home. Okay, so you may be wondering why I specifically chose Los Angeles to do this comparison as opposed to Dallas, which is really close to Fort Worth. So, I was born and raised in a small suburb town that no one's ever heard of called San Marino, which is right next to Pasadena. And in my 20 years of living there, I've become really knowledgeable about all the places to visit there. And Los Angeles is such a huge city, it almost feels like there's a bunch of smaller cities within it. So, being that LA is such a large city, it really reminded me of Fort Worth, yet it's very different at the same time because Fort Worth has a much smaller town feel, whereas Los Angeles feels so large. Okay, so the first place that I wanted to compare was the Magnolia and Fairmount area. And Magnolia Avenue is filled with a lot of local businesses as opposed to larger corporations, which I found really unique to the area. And there were just a ton of coffee shops and restaurants, as well as fun places like Melt Ice Cream, as you can see in that picture. So, this area immediately reminded me of Larchmont Village, which is a neighborhood in the Los Angeles area. And the main street has a bunch of small restaurants and coffee shops, bakeries, clothing stores, all of which are also locally owned. So, these places are super similar. And my favorite ice cream shop is Salt and Straw, which is on Larchmont. So this really reminded me of Melt, which is a really big ice cream shop in the Fort Worth area. So Magnolia and Larchmont are both great areas to visit to support local businesses and to socialize with friends in a small community setting. So now to change things up a lot, focusing on downtown. So of course I had to compare downtown Fort Worth to downtown LA. So my father actually works downtown in the gas company tower in Los Angeles, and he has to leave at 6 a.m. to beat the traffic every day. So downtown Fort Worth is a very different feeling. There was absolutely no traffic, and when we were walking around during the day, we barely saw anyone walking around. It was just such a different feel. Also, in downtown LA, there was a lot of homelessness everywhere, especially in an area called Skid Row. And we didn't notice this as much in downtown Fort Worth. And also, when looking at the water gardens, I was wondering if there's any area in LA that had more of a recreational area, which to me was not as prevalent as, say, New York City and Central Park. But after thinking, I remembered Pershing Square, which is right in like the heart of downtown LA. And I used to go ice skating there during the winter time, which was really fun. And although it's a lot different than the water gardens in Fort Worth and a big park in New York City, it's still more of a recreational area within the downtown area. So, although downtown LA is a lot more populous, both downtowns have a ton of business people walking around during the day. Okay, so now on to the Arts District of Fort Worth. So even though there's a lot of art museums in LA, I really wanted to focus on something that was more personable to me because I don't have a lot of experience with a lot of the art museums downtown. So the Huntington Library is actually in my hometown of San Marino, and it's probably the one thing that makes us famous, even though we're not really a well-known town. So it has a lot of historic books and arts and botanical garden, so it isn't just an art museum. So, compared to the Arts District in Fort Worth, this area is unique because there's a ton of nature, as you can see in that picture, surrounding the museum, which is a really unique environment, and that's why it gets so much traction for our city. So, the museum has a lot of American, European, British, and Asian art, which particularly reminded me of the Kimball Art Museum because it had a ton of different origins of art as well. And despite Huntington being in my small town, it has a lot of really famous and popular things like a lot of Gutenberg Bibles, and it has the famous Blue Boy painting as well. So, even though it's nice to see that there's a lot of good art museums in Fort Worth, the Huntington Library is unique due to its outdoor beauty as well, and it reminds me of home too. Okay, now on to 7th Street, and this week we specifically focused on recreation. So first, I was wondering what part of LA really shows recreation, and I immediately thought of Santa Monica Pier. So when I think of LA and a place where people want to go to have fun, I definitely think of the pier. And it's interesting because 7th Street is also surrounded by water, the Trinity River. However, I feel like the similarities really end there because 7th Street is more geared towards college students and young adults due to the bars and the night scene. And even though the pier is a fun place for young adults as well, I definitely see a lot of adults there. And it's fun for all ages, but it's definitely good for children as well. So it has a lot of carnival games and amusement park attractions that all children can go on. So even though it does get busier at night, it closes at nighttime, like 10 o'clock. So this is really different compared to 7th Street, which is becoming more bustling with people around 10 p.m. So, okay, so now on to Clear Fork. So, Clear Fork immediately reminded me of Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills, which is a really wealthy, well known area in Los Angeles. So, Clear Fork is a really upscale shopping center with a specific clientele in mind, specifically the upper class. And Rodeo Drive is one of the most famous streets in the world. People love taking pictures there, and it's been featured on a ton of different TV shows as well for having such high end stores. Both shopping areas share high end stores like Louis Vuitton, Tiffany and Co., and Burberry. Overall, I would definitely say that Rodeo Drive is a lot more extreme and has a ton more shops than Clear Fork, which is a lot smaller. And it's, well known for having all those high end stores. And even though Clear Fork is still aimed towards a wealthy clientele, it's a much smaller area. And both areas are definitely not a place for college students to go shopping on the weekends. And next, I focused on the near South Side area, which really focused on modern development and revitalization. So near South Side is an area of Fort Worth that is rapidly changing. So new stores and restaurants are coming in every year. And the area is all about bringing in new modern development into the city of Fort Worth. So I decided to compare near South Side to a large outdoor shopping center complex called the Americana at Brand in Los Angeles. And it just opened in 2008, so a lot of changes have been happening really rapidly. And even just since that opening, I've seen a lot of stores come and go in the area. So the area is so focused on being innovative, and it even has a Sprinkles Cupcake ATM. So it's all about doing all that new stuff and making it more innovative and futuristic compared to older shopping centers. And they even opened an Amazon apparel store just this year. So even though it is a newer place, places are still becoming new and they're adding places. There's a Tesla store as well. So it's really focused on revitalizing the area. And the employees that we talked to in the near South Side area talked about how the businesses really supported each other instead of making it a competitive environment. However, I feel like the opposite is probably true of the Americana. This is an extremely popular area, And any store that can't bring in revenue definitely won't stay long because the rent is extremely high. And lastly is the stockyards. So the stockyards are most famously known for showing the cowboy and Western culture of Fort Worth. And at first, I was kind of struggling to figure out how this would relate to Los Angeles, that has nothing like this, no cowboys or Western culture at all like that. And then I remembered the history of movies and television filming in the area, and that's kind of what made Los Angeles so popular and famous in the first place, specifically the Hollywood area. So I remembered Hollywood Boulevard, which showcases the film industry of LA and is geared more towards tourists, which is similar to the stockyards as well. And even though the themes are really different, cowboys versus actors in movies, both places show what brought each city popularity in the first place and keeps tourists coming every year. So I thought it was interesting to see the parallels between the famous Hollywood Walk of Fame on the right side and the Trail of Fame in the stockyards. And Hollywood Boulevard also has a ton of theaters and museums, like the Wax Museum, which I visited before. So it's pretty refreshing to see how each city honors their culture and past in their unique ways and brings in a lot of traction and tourists. Okay, so I hope you learned a lot about Los Angeles and Fort Worth and how to compare different cities. So eventually, if you ever move to a new city, it could be really helpful to find places that remind you of your old favorites from home. So once I move to Fort Worth eventually, I'll have plenty of places that remind me of home due to this final project. This course has really taught me to view city in a new light and how to make connections through sensory experiences. And I'll take this knowledge with me whenever I explore a new city, either during vacation or if I move somewhere new, and I hope that you do as well.